This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast. Hi, it's Marty from the Accelerator team. I'm here again with Jack. Hi, Jack.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm all right, yeah.
Oh, you seem a bit funny there. So we're going to talk about navigating business growth and the challenges, the things, the issues that people face when they go from single person idea almost up to, you know, the very largest of businesses.
Yeah.
We've got a loose kind of structure here, but let's talk about, you know, the purest of business, one person in business, no one else involved, pros and cons, I suppose we'll start with.
Well, yeah, and that's where pretty much every business starts. It's very rare that you have a business where suddenly you have 10 people working for you straight away.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain examples, but I suppose the benefits of that is you have the absolute freedom. Like you're in a position where you can control everything, which I suppose there's a pro and a con in the same time.
Yeah.
Because the benefit is, if you're that kind of controlling person, then you can actually do everything exactly how you like to do it. You haven't got someone else that you've got to
control the quality of the work, when you respond to people, what price you charge. Obviously the market has an impact on that and your customer, but if you say you've got the customer and you as the deliverer, then you've got complete control over the delivery, haven't you?
Yeah.
Every part of it.
But the downside of that is that you have control of everything, but that we're focusing on the stuff that you like, the stuff that you like doing. So if you're a builder, I get to go out to the clients, I get to do all of the work, I get to, provide the best quality service that I possibly can. But then let's not forget, you're also the company accountant.
Yeah.
You're the company's marketer.
The health and safety guy.
The health and safety guy. So you've got to do all of that stuff which you don't like to do, and unfortunately that's all necessary in order for you to do the stuff that you do want to do.
Yeah.
So the natural inclination is for you to do all of that stuff, well, to get to a position where you can grow and like actually bring someone else on that can maybe take some of that stuff that you don't want to do anymore.
I think that comes as quite a shock to some people as well. There's a classic meme that goes around. I gave up working for someone else so I could make my own decisions or have more freedom. Now I work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's like, so if you get it wrong, it can go terribly wrong, can't it?
Yeah, it can do, and I think that's a lot of people don't really appreciate that. They think that setting up a business is easy and all the work comes to you, but unfortunately you're also responsible for getting that work.
Winning the work, pricing the work, every part of it, Okay. So what's the first normal step there then, Jack? Is, doing 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't want to do that. The next normal step would be to get some help, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And sometimes you see people go into partnership, so there's then a couple of people running the business, but just as often they'll say, well, actually we'll get some help. We'll get some staff in.
So you either bring on someone that you've worked with before, someone that you can trust implicitly to, who will just get on with the work. Some people might go down the route of going, well, I'm going to get someone younger in, maybe look at an apprentice, for example, and mould them into my image. It kind of depends on the industry as well, because that's maybe the route you go down, like if you're in a trade, for example, and the benefits of obviously taking an apprentice on. Or you might go down the route of someone that you've worked with for 20 odd years in a previous role. But there's also the potential, like in a more service-based industry, you might look at just bringing someone else in that's got a proven track record in kind of the administrative side of things.
Or get a PA, a VA, or outsource some of the bits you don't like.
Exactly.
But immediately you've got then, you need to start thinking about the structure of your business straight away, don't you? Because as soon at the point there's more than one person, you then need to decide who's going to do what. And I think often that can be blurry, can't it?
It certainly can do, particularly when geography gets in the way. When you're in an office, it may not be so bad, but saying that, you may be actually bringing someone else on remotely. So even then, like, delegation is so important, so you have absolute trust and clarity over what they're doing and how you can free up your own time, I suppose.
Yeah.
So
if you get that wrong, there's the job that nobody does, or the job that you both do and you've wasted time.
Yeah.
And neither's good. So the delegating needs to be done right. It's got to be, well, you always do this, I will always do that. If you can't, let me know, and if I can't, I'll let you know. Because it's not like you can't help each other, but you just, even on a basic level, that delegation has to be done in a proper controlled way, doesn't it?
And there's almost like a social contract that, admittedly with an apprentice, there's not a huge amount of stuff you can delegate to them. It's you know yourself that they're just there as a more like a shadow.
The apprentice would normally sit on your shoulder though.
Yeah, they would shadow.
Yeah.
But if you're bringing someone else in, a partner, then you need to have those discussions around what the expectations of them are.
Yeah.
And how to divvy up those kind of hats of the business.
This also brings in quite another thing. So there's the actual doing of the work, but then there's the tone, the message, the values, the behaviours, which you've got to get the right person to then make sure they fall within what you want from the business, haven't you?
Yeah, and similarly, if you're bringing a partner in, then you obviously need to make sure that all of that stuff aligns ahead of time. So you have a consistent message coming out of the business, so you don't have, if it's two men in two different vans, then you have somebody who's going off trying to win high-end work, and focusing on certain geographical areas, and the other person's gone off to do bargain basement stuff.
And cheap jobs off Facebook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that immediately distorts the brand. And obviously, similarly, if your payment terms have to reflect that as well, so you've got one person who will kind of demand payment up front, the other one's like, just pay me when you can. And then suddenly that's when the other person goes over to an existing client of the other partner, and he goes like, right, well, pay me 100% up front.
It gives a totally different impression of what,
what do you mean? Like, I drop it off of him like 2 weeks after, I'll put it through his letterbox or something like that.
He likes cash in.
He likes cash in hand.
Used notes of...
Exactly. He's like, oh, right, that explains why do all of my customers pay by bank transfer?
Yeah. It's interesting as well because a lot of these things you can get away with when there's only a couple of people. But as time goes on and as the business grows, these differences will start to prove to be bigger wedges, won't they?
Totally, yeah.
And you see quite often businesses, I've had people in our boardroom where I think at one point there was 8 people saying, we're going to start a property investment company together. This was many, many years ago. I was like, right, okay then. And I knew one of them really well. I said, I don't think it's a good idea. I think 8 people is too many to buy 1 or 2 houses, which is what we're planning. And he said, it'll be fine, we'll all know each other really well. And literally within about 3 weeks, there'd been one separation, one divorce, someone fighting over who was meant to have ran the plumber. And it just, it lasted a couple of years, it linked on, but it fell apart terribly because there was just too many people.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be a clear line of command, for want of a better word.
Yeah,
which is important to set at the start, isn't it?
And that is one of the benefits of kind of that at the start, is you have that very agile structure, which is very hierarchical, and everything has to go through the business owner or the partners, which is the benefit. And admittedly, if you're starting off and your structure is the inverted pyramid, where you've got very few people at the bottom and a lot of decision makers at the top, then that's where it can fall apart. Having said that, when you get to that point where you're growing, suddenly that line of command where everything has to go through the business owner is just not feasible.
Yeah, which is another problem, because it's quite hard to then give up that control. We've talked about delegation briefly, we've covered it quite a lot in other episodes as well. And I think it's quite hard because people fail to delegate for a whole load of reasons, like, they can't do it as well as me. Using Obed, you would say, well, that's your fault, you haven't trained them. Or they didn't do what I asked them. Well, that's your fault, you should have gave a clear instruction. They forgot to chase that, they didn't pay the bill. Did they know they were meant to pay the bill? Did they have a proper job description? And it's quite funny because when you're running a business, and we see this, when you're running a business, you've got a team of 20 people and you kind of go, things just aren't happening. It's like, well, you've got to start with yourself, and sometimes that can be quite an adjustment for someone who's used to just making every decision and getting things done, to all of a sudden think, why is this not working anymore?
There's that expectation.
More people than ever.
Yeah, that's an
expectation. Why is it not working?
An expectation for somebody that they should just do what you do.
Yeah.
With absolutely no kind of clarification or education
without telling them anything about it.
Because it is interesting, because to have a successful business, you need to be good at two things. You've got to be, first of all, be good enough at the thing that you're meant to be doing, that you get to a point where you can actually grow it and take on other people. Yeah. But then the second skill is actually running the business.
Which is a totally different thing.
Totally different. Yeah. So it's two different skills. Like, it's like you can be the best builder in the world. Again, we seem to be talking a lot about builders, but you'll only get to a certain size because if you can't successfully kind of get to that stage where you can also delegate and run the business and have five of your equivalents doing the exact same job that you are, to the same standard, to the same quality, and if you can't, then if you fail to do that, then you're going to be limited to a certain size where you're going to be on every single job.
Yeah.
Admittedly, some people will be more than happy with that. They might get a perfectly comfortable living and enjoy that freedom. But there's been plenty of people that have done that successfully and then went, actually, I want to grow a little bit more, I want to grow a little bit more. And they find these obstacles where they have to bring on other people, and it's just not as straightforward as you like to think.
Yeah. I mean, we might be talking about builders, because before this I referenced Neil McGregor, who sat there and talked about how he struggled to go through these things and the lessons he'd learned. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because it's an easy visual example as well, isn't it? You know, lad plastering walls, gets a couple of mates to help in a van, gets another van, straight away the dynamic has changed dramatically. Mm-hmm. Who's picking up the materials for both the lads? Are they both picking up the materials? Who makes the decisions on the job if something goes not quite right? Yeah. Does he have to be in both places at once? And you just can't. So when do you think it would, what factors need to be present, do you think, Jack, for businesses to start really thinking about these hierarchical changes? And by hierarchy, we just mean structure, whatever you want to call organisational format. It's just
we've touched on it a little bit, and there are different structures that naturally evolve from that kind of autocratic function that most startups have, where everything goes through the business owner, and it kind of depends on the business itself. Like, it may be a case that geography is a factor, we've touched on that, in which case you need to start looking more like divisionally, like, well, if we've got 2 offices or we've got 2 vans, right, well, with that there needs to be an element of responsibility and delegation, and there needs to be some kind of hierarchy there in order
within each of those vans even.
Yes.
Someone has to be not necessarily the driver, mm-hmm. Someone has to drive the decisions of that van, that unit. Mm-hmm. That is now a unit in isolation, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah, and they'll be responsible
which needs to know what it can and can't do.
Yeah, and they'll be responsible for ensuring the work goes as it plans, pulls up the schedule, delegates the tasks. Obviously, is the main kind of communication with the client, may be responsible for ordering materials up to a certain point, and ultimately be the mouthpiece with the owner as well, so they can check in.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that person there, then suddenly, although the business owner is in another van, he's still doing a full-time job. He can't be effective in his own work if he's chasing up every 15 minutes going, what's happened? Have you finished this task? Oh, I need to come over and have a look at it and check it. Oh, we need to go and buy some more materials. Right, I'm going to go out. Or you go out, oh, but I have to authorise the expense.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because exactly this, I don't think Neil will object to me saying this, but there was a time when Neil was still the one who would do the emergency material pickups, because the lads would have got to a site, they're set up, we've only got enough plaster to get me through half the day. Well, why did you not? And those lessons are hard learned.
Yeah, exactly. And the irony being,
he's got to then apologise to his customer and go sorry, I've got to go and do this, and then it really disrupts your day,
And the irony being that you got the most valuable person doing the most menial tasks. The business owner's going out buying plaster,
doing the butty run.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what challenges will people have then? Because we talked about, it might just be going over the same again, but people don't delegate because. We've touched on these. Is it worth just re-emphasising why?
Yeah, I mean, there's
struggle with this.
There's definitely an element of kind of self-sabotage, in terms of that controlling nature, that you want to have absolute control over
perfectionist
everything.
Almost.
Yeah. So you want to keep hold of all of this stuff, so you can ensure that it goes to the best, it goes to the way you want it to go.
Which is understandable, mind you.
Yeah,
we're not saying that's a bad thing.
Yeah, and I think
we're not saying you should throw caution to the wind and let them do whatever they want.
Yeah, I brought this new lad in and just give it.
But there's other ways to get that, isn't there?
Yeah.
By ensuring the proper training, the proper discussions before the job, proper notes on what the job is. You know, that's the wall you're doing, on that edge I want this, keep an eye on the corners, lift the carpet foot, like to make sure there's a proper system. Then you haven't got to micromanage it as it goes, have you?
Yeah, and you can develop that trust a lot quicker because you know that they can follow instructions. Right, well I can give them a little bit more, I can give them a little bit more.
Yeah.
And if you do it right, then you're gonna, all stakeholders are going to be completely on board. Like the people that work for you are going to enjoy that additional autonomy that they're given and the trust that they have. So it's kind of a win-win, but as I said, like a lot of it is kind of wrestling control, particularly if you're coming from that sustained period where you've been working 12-hour days, you've built the business up to a certain point in terms of size and reputation, which is massive. Yeah. It's very hard to then just go hand over the reins to somebody else and go, right, you're now responsible for the reputation of my business by going out on site and doing these jobs. Yeah, yeah. It's very difficult. It's also just an element of ignorance. Like going back to my point I said before, like everyone doesn't realise there's two skills involved in having a successful business, and they're so focused on the first one in terms of being good at what they do that they're just the blinkhead. Just totally, just don't know what is on their sides. Yeah, and they don't appreciate what's required in order to scale up a business. I've been doing a lot of work with a client where it has experienced a lot of growth very quickly, but it's now a question of like actually professionalizing the business to get the processes and systems in place that reflect the size of it, because at the moment it's a bit, when we first went in there it was very, very casual because that's the nature of the business. It's grown out of somebody's bedroom, and now they're employing kind of 25 people, and it's just like, well, all right, well, we need to have some like policies in place here around HR, recruitment, health and safety. You need to get a proper IT system in, because at the moment you're just basically running off a load of laptops. Buying laptops from Currys and plugging them in and hoping they work. Exactly, and it's just like, well, actually you've got quite a significant business here, so you need to really start thinking about that. Similarly, like kind of premises, etc. So, and you don't realise that, like at the time you're just like, well, I'm just selling stuff online, like I just need to focus on ensuring that the sales happen. The right stock for the right price, But then suddenly your first employee comes in and goes, what about my holiday entitlement and bank holidays and flexible working and maternity leave, etc. And I'm not feeling well, and and it's just like, what? What? So again, another podcast we did with John Paul, he talked about one of the most liberating things he did was when he appointed an MD, which was his job. Almost. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to get someone to do my job. And he said it was fantastic. And obviously he found someone that he trusted and he knew would be all right to do it. How there must be a progression though that leads to that. You don't just go straight from, well, everyone reports to me to everyone now reports to someone else, because that won't fix it. You'll just pass that same problem on to that next person. They'll realise, bloody hell, like I haven't got time to do my job here because I've got too much stuff on. There's a point where you must, you need team leads or some kind of departmental management or something. Yeah, so we kind of touched on the divisional side, which is the geographical split. But then there's also like functional structures in place as well, where you basically break down your business into different functions. So if you've got a manufacturing, you've got a factory making stuff, someone's going to have to run the factory. Yeah. Someone's going to run the sales team that sells the stuff. Exactly, and we've touched on the 10 hats, and essentially the functions largely fall into those 10 hats. So at the point where you get to a business where you can hand off all of those various hats and then sit with just the strategic one, which you would do as an MD, but that's also a hat in itself, so you could actually feasibly, and that's what happens when you get to like kind of, significantly size, thinking about maybe, well, obviously John Paul's not floating on the FTSE 100, but at some point around there, at that point the business owner generally steps away and they may sit on a more kind of non-exec role or an executive chairman role, where they're more of a figurehead, but they're not in the day-to-day running of the business. They're not actually running it, And that's where a lot of people want to get to. Similarly, a lot of people might get to that point where they're MD and go, actually, I want to sell it. So both options are completely viable, but you tend to see it less in kind of smaller businesses. The generally the people who kind of get their business to that point want to stick around because they've still probably got that little bit of controlling nature in them when they're like, well...
That's also what they enjoy doing as well. They chose to do that. It wasn't... Not many people start a business that they're not interested in.
Yeah. You don't get into it and just go, thank God.
Because you could be fantastic at, I don't know, making tables, but if you hated making tables, you're probably not going to start a business in it. But equally, not many people on the smaller end just kind of go, well, I'll just give this a go then. Mm-hmm. I've never done it before, but what the hell, I'll give it a go. Yeah. It doesn't normally happen, does it?
No.
Jack, we've talked a lot about the internal pressures. Are there external pressures? And I suppose I'm thinking here, if you want to expand, you might want to borrow some money. The bank will want to see certain things in place.
Yeah.
If you're taking investors, they will want certain things in place.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the scenarios we talked about so far are being kind of organic growth in terms of like you slowly over time building up cash flow, building up profits, etc., to the point where you start thinking about you've got the natural resources,
got enough money to do it.
Yeah, to bring stuff on. But a lot of people kind of go down the alternate route where they may be looking at finance to get to that next level in terms of growth. And that it does put a lot of pressure on you because suddenly that's another stakeholder that's interested in your business and how you run
in a way that asking questions you might not have had to answer before to anyone.
Because I mean, even at the most basic level on the finance side, the amount of people that we've had come through the door who go like, all right, well, I've just got a loan from the bank, and they're asking for management accounts. What the hell are management accounts? It's just like, all right, well, maybe not. Right, okay.
That's what happens when you want to borrow £1 million off the bank.
Yeah, because they want to know that you're making a profit on a consistent basis and you can afford to repay them. So of course they want to see that. All right, okay.
You want to know you've got a plan.
Exactly.
That's all it is, really a plan, isn't it?
Definitely.
What's your performance been and what's the plan? Mm-hmm. That's all management accounts and a forecast are, aren't they?
Totally, yeah. But similarly, you're going to have the more money that's on the line, the more interest they're going to take, and the more they're going to kick the tires and go, right, well, talk me through this, and they want to have their concerns satisfied. Mm-hmm. And that's just not necessarily on the financial side, but you said they're going to want to see a business plan which is going to encompass everything. Yeah. Talk to me about how you're going to market the product. What products are you developing? What's the timeline on getting them out? How are you going to sell them? Yeah. What about your employees? Like,
where you're getting it from?
Yeah.
If you're importing materials, they're going to have everything in their mind, aren't they?
Definitely.
Is it fair to say then, Jack, that there's actually some issues? So we talked about how people at the start might get a business partner and then have different ideas. But equally at the larger end, if you take in venture capitalists, for instance, they'll normally say, well, if we're in here, we've got a 5-year gig and then we're out. Mm-hmm. So we want massive aggressive growth for 5 years. That's how they're going to make their money. That's going to have a similar disconnect if that's not what you want, isn't it?
No.
So you've got to really think carefully about doing any of these big steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and particularly in that scenario where people are looking for funding, like they're generally they haven't got the power, or they don't feel like they've got the power, so they will just they'll get into bed with anyone.
Because they want the money.
Yeah, they want the money. Yeah. So that's fine. But then in reality, absolutely, if the management team or you as the business, as the founder, are going, well, I don't think I really want to do that, then that's where it's best to flush that out ahead of time before the first board meeting, when they go, what do you mean when we got 3% growth? We were looking at 25% growth.
You said you had a massive untapped market, you just needed some money.
Yeah.
We'll give you the money, what's going on?
Yeah, you said you smashed your sales targets, but we're looking at growth here of 3%. You're like, well, that is smashing our sales targets.
That's all equal.
No, that's called below inflation growth.
So without sounding boring, these things have all happened before, and I suppose the legal profession would say we've got the answer for all of these things, and largely they have. Mm-hmm. So a mix of HR and legal, I would say, have got a lot of these things already covered. You've already got to give an employment contract to an employee. It's already meant to say what they're meant to do for you, what holidays they're going to get. So I suppose a lot of these things can be preempted by just following the proper process. Yeah. But it doesn't solve the emotional side of it. Knowing that you've employed someone and they've got a contract that says what they're doing doesn't solve that you've still got to train them and do those things. But I suppose we should give a shout out to the fact that if there's multiple people in business, you should have a partnership agreement or a shareholder agreement.
Yes.
If you're taking a loan on, you should make sure you know the conditions of the loan. Same goes with an investor. So again, good legal or professional help can highlight a lot of these things, which is a good reason why you shouldn't jump into them, isn't it?
Yeah, and at the outset is the best time when you can kind of thrash out some of these agreements. It's all well and good.
Before it's too late.
Exactly. You can't negotiate with a shareholders agreement when you've fallen out, because obviously that's not going to work. Yeah. So it's best to kind of get this stuff either not done at the outset or do it whilst the sun is shining and everything's rosy. Yeah. So you can, and then it will just save you so much effort in the long term.
Don't wait until there's a dispute.
Exactly. Yeah. When there's potentially, if something goes wrong, and at that point all bets are off.
Yeah. Is it fair to say as well, Jack, that businesses will rely on others more or less depending on where they are in their cycle? One of the things I always say to small businesses is, well, initially they're probably quiet enough to write their own books up, just get someone to submit a basic set of accounts and tax return for them. They'll grow a bit. They might want to get in bookkeeping done by somebody else because they haven't got the time anymore. They'll probably outsource that because they haven't. They'll grow a bit more, and eventually they'll have a large enough team that will get a bookkeeper internally who races all their invoices, does other things. So even if you look at just the accountancy needs of a business as they grow, they will vary dramatically right up to full finance team in-house, and we just do the audit and the complex stuff. That's presumably mirrored across other things, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is down to the business owner's preference, because as we've already said, they wear those 10 hats of business when they start off, and it's the ones that they really don't like doing, the ones they're going to get rid of first.
Or they won't do, which is actually,
Yeah, so they'll either neglect them or they'll look at outsourcing them at the first opportunity. And there's just different routes down it, because even on the finance side, some people prefer to have someone physically come in, and they might bring them on a part-time basis, or there might be a one-man band they prefer, as opposed to getting an accountancy firm to do it, because they've got
someone to sit in the corner 2 days a week and I want to know what they're up to. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it, as I said, very much dependent on the individual. Some of them might want to, as soon as I get to that stage, I want to get rid of this marketing function. I want to bring someone else in to run our social media, for example, because I hate it. Yeah. But I know that I have to do it, or I know I need to have a presence on there, because that's where a lot of my work comes from. So
that's a great example of probably just to kind of really enforce this point, where the messaging and the tone of the business is really important, because so many people try and outsource their social media, and some succeed and get it right. But I know so many who just say, I don't even like the stuff that I'm paying someone to put stuff out I don't even like. Or they're talking about services we don't even do. Yeah. They just assume that all builders do a thing. Well, but we don't even do it, Yeah. And again, it's about making sure there's clear instruction, delegation is done properly, proper chain of command.
Or they're writing a blog, for example, on something and then they fundamentally disagree with what they've said.
Let's go. No, I think I don't think people should do that. I think it's a great idea.
So it is interesting. I suppose that's one of the most difficult ones to really outsource, because authenticity is very important. So
because you can see through it, can't you?
Oh, totally.
You can see through if someone's not having any input in their own output. But equally, I suppose you would see that not just in their social, but people buy the business. They've normally met the founder. They've normally met the person they like, and they want that from everything they get from that business. And equally, it's not always going to happen, is it?
Unfortunately, not. No.
Yeah. Okay then. Well, listen, Jack, we've talked about lots of stuff. Is there one takeaway, one thing that you see people getting wrong here, or what's the kind of the closing remarks on this?
I suppose going back to the point of developing, we talk about sharpening your sword in terms of always looking at improving, and it should be the case of you should be sharpening two swords, sharpening your overall ability to do your job well as a standalone individual, but also sharpening your business skills in terms of how you can be better at running your business as well.
For people who don't know what you're talking about, sharpening swords.
So I suppose it's it's a analogy in terms of for good preparation, I suppose. Just like how you know, a knight of the round table would sharpen their sword before battle.
Yeah.
Ensure to get the best possible.
Not during battle.
Not during.
Or after, whilst licking their wounds.
No.
Yeah.
But like, always kind of in preparation of something happening, always being ready, and to ensure you can provide the best possible impact.
And the multiple swords are, we've got loads of analogies going on, but that's the different areas of business, the 10 hats.
Yes.
Yeah.
So ensure we're always thinking about how you can be better at running your business and better impact within your business as an individual.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jack.
No worries. Pleasure as always.
Good. Hope you enjoyed that. That was navigating business growth, pains, and a load of other things as well.
Structure.
Structure, yeah. Hope you enjoyed that. As always, we appreciate your feedback. Hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you think. And if you've got any ideas for future topics, we'll take those off you as well. Thank you very much.